Have you ever pondered the possibility of more than three dimensions? As we navigate through our daily lives, we're bound by the confines of a three-dimensional world. Yet, what if there was more to reality than what meets the eye? What if we could perceive and interact with additional dimensions? The concept might seem far-fetched, but it's not entirely new. In fact, more than a century ago, a novel titled Flatland was penned by Edwin A. Abbott. This intriguing work of fiction explores life in a two-dimensional world and the challenges faced by its inhabitants when confronted with the concept of a third dimension. It's a mind-bending exploration of spatial dimensions and a stark reminder of how our perception of reality is bound by our own dimensional constraints. So, how would we perceive these additional dimensions? Let's delve into this fascinating question. To grasp this concept, we first need to understand spatial dimensions. Imagine a cart on a straight track. The cart can only move forward or backward along the track. This is a one-dimensional world where movement is restricted to a single line. Now let's introduce a second dimension. Picture a sheet of paper on a table. If we place a tiny ant on the paper, it can now move not only forward and backward, but also to the left and right. This is a two-dimensional world where movement is possible in any direction along the plane of the paper, but we live in a three-dimensional world. So let's add another dimension. To do this, imagine a cube. The ant can now move forward, backward, left, right, but also up and down. This is a three-dimensional world where movement is possible in any direction within the volume of the cube. Now you might be wondering, what about time? Isn't that a dimension too? Well, in physics, yes, time is often considered the fourth dimension. But for the purpose of this discussion, we're focusing strictly on spatial dimensions. So what does it mean to live in a three-dimensional world? It means that we can move freely in any direction within the space around us. We can walk forward, backward, left, right, climb up a ladder, or dive into a pool. But what if there were more dimensions? What if there was a fourth or even a fifth spatial dimension? How would that change our perception of the world? Would we be able to move in ways we can't even imagine right now? Or would these additional dimensions remain hidden from us, just as a third dimension would be hidden from the inhabitants of a two-dimensional world? These are all fascinating questions, and they're the ones we're going to explore as we dive deeper into the concept of dimensions. Now that we have a basic understanding of dimensions, let's apply this concept to our three-dimensional world. Imagine being a three-dimensional being interacting with Flatland's two-dimensional world. Picture this scenario. You're a sphere, or perhaps a cube, making your grand entrance into Flatland, a world where everything exists on a flat plane. How would you appear to Flatland's inhabitants? Flatland's denizens, being two-dimensional, would only ever perceive a cross-section of you, a slice of your three-dimensional self. If you're a sphere, you'd start as a point, grow into a circle as you descend into their plane, and then shrink back into a point as you pass through. To them, you would seem to appear out of nowhere, morph into a circle, and then vanish just as mysteriously. A cube, on the other hand, would appear as a square that changes in size as you move through their plane. Now, let's flip this interaction. Imagine you're trying to communicate with these two-dimensional beings. You could try talking, but sound as a wave would be baffling to them, as they lack the third dimension necessary to understand it as we do. You could attempt to touch them, but that might be even more confusing, as your touch would feel like it's coming from inside them, a concept utterly alien to their two-dimensional reality. This hypothetical interaction illustrates the challenges of perceiving and interacting with dimensions beyond our own. We, as three-dimensional beings, would struggle to explain our world to Flatland's inhabitants, just as we might struggle to understand the world of a being from a higher dimension. But what if we took it a step further? What if there were a fourth dimension? How would a four-dimensional being appear to us in our three-dimensional world? How would they interact with us, and how would we perceive their attempts at communication? These are the questions we'll explore next, as we plunge deeper into the fascinating world of dimensions beyond our daily experience. How would a fourth dimension look like to us? Let's imagine a ruler. We can move it up and down, back and forth, and side to side. That's three dimensions. But what if there was another direction we could move it in, one we can't perceive? That's the idea of a fourth dimension. Now imagine a hypersphere or a hypercube, four-dimensional analogs of spheres and cubes. To us, in our three-dimensional world, these objects would appear distorted, changing shape as they move through our space, just as a sphere passing through flat land would appear to its inhabitants as a circle that changes size. And beings from the fourth dimension, they'd interact with us in ways we can't fully comprehend. They could peer into our most secure buildings, pluck us out of locked rooms. We'd see them appear and disappear in our three dimensions like apparitions. This certainly boggles the mind, doesn't it? But there's more. Our perception of dimensions is limited. This statement, while simple, holds profound implications. We're like the inhabitants of Flatland, living in our three-dimensional world, unable to fully grasp the idea of anything beyond. But just as we can interact with and observe Flatland, it's possible that higher dimensional beings could be interacting with our world in ways we can't comprehend. This thought takes us to the edge of our understanding, to a realm where our intuition and everyday experience no longer serve as reliable guides. Yet this is where the magic of scientific exploration shines brightest. It's where we question, hypothesize, and dream. Could we one day perceive a fourth dimension or even more? It's a tantalizing question. The universe is a vast, complex tapestry, woven with threads of dimensions we may not even be aware of. There is much more in the universe than we can perceive. Consider this: what realities might be out there just waiting for us to discover?